story and the sentence barbaric. A woman in Iran convicted of adultery without a shred of evidence is sentenced to death. She was supposed to be buried in the ground up to her chest and stoned to death. But because of international outrage, the stoning now is on hold. But for how long?
Joins us right now from Los Angeles, Iranian-American and journalist Lisa Daftari. Good morning to you, Lisa.
Good morning to you.
Okay, so the story came out that this woman was going to be stoned to death for, illicit relations with a couple of guys and maybe adultery as well. Why did Iran change their mind?
Well, there was a lot of international pressure. Some campaigns were launched by the Americans, by the British. And as we've seen in the past, whenever there's been international pressure on Iran, they kind of scale back a bit. But that doesn't mean that once they're out of the spotlight or they're clear that they won't go back and just stone her or find another way to execute her.
Oh, boy.
At one point, I saw a depiction, it may have been in a documentary, of what this would actually look like. I mean, I couldn't even look at the television screen, Lisa. It's absolutely barbaric and horrible. And let's just mention and make clear that there's not a shred of evidence against this woman that she even committed a crime. Well, in Iran, it's a crime. Right?
No, there's not a shred of evidence, and like you said, it is barbaric. It's meant to be a slow and painful, unbearable death, and it's reserved just for women who commit adultery. I mean, obviously, like any other country, murder and rape and robbery and drug trafficking are all punishable, and in Iran, they're punishable by death. But those victims are hanged. But women who commit adultery, and just based on an accusation, no evidence, can be stoned to death.
Yeah. What is it about this particular case? You know, they've had this law on the books over in Iran for a long time, and it's barbaric and it's stupid. But why is it this particular case has garnered so much attention?
It's because of this international campaign. Her son went to a human rights activist based in London, and she made this a huge case, and thankfully so, because there are so many cases like this. Last year alone, close to 400 people were executed in Iran. That's second in the world only to China. And when you take the populations into account, it's probably first in the world.
Right.
I mean, 400 people, and so many of them might have just been based on an accusation just like this woman.
So, Lisa, if she's not stoned to death, how else might they execute her?
They might hang her. I mean, hanging is probably the most popular way of execution in Iran. There's so many people on death row. There's a couple other women that are actually waiting to be stoned as well. One hasn't reached the age of 18 yet, the legal age for stoning, so she's awaiting that. But most are hanged, yes.
Iran is just stuck in the dark ages.
Well, it's based on Islamic Sharia law, and it's not the first time, actually, that Iran has come under the international spotlight for stoning. And in 2002, there was a moratorium on stoning, but again, we see that they've gone back on their word.
Lisa, thank you so much. And to think that at the last UN Council, I think Iran made it on the Human Rights Commission or something like that, which is even more mind-boggling. Lisa, thanks for your expertise on this.